1 year ago, I took it upon myself to build the Northern Lights in Minecraft. And when I posted those builds, they garnered quite a bit of support, and I was super happy with what I was able to get done, as you can see. But unfortunately, since then, I have actually lost the world and the creative world that I used to plan those builds. It hasn't happened often, but I ended up losing quite a bit of progress by losing both of those. So I thought, why not use that negative to make it into a positive? And you make a little tutorial on how to spruce up your Minecraft plains with northern lights, trees, and a bit of snow usage. So let's get right into it. Okay, here we are in a creative world. I just kind of wanted to go step by step, and let's start with the northern lights here and how I do it. As you can see, I have a red squiggly line. That's kind of all you need to get started. It's kind of the rough outline of the northern lights in the sky. And as it kind of goes up and along, I want there to be some height. So like when you're viewing it from up above, it doesn't look like this flat thing. Like it does vary in height as it goes along. And as you can see here, there are a ton of different colors you can use and gradients for the Northern Lights. It's all out of glass, and I think basically all of them look cool. So there's that. They can be red, yellow, greens, all the purples, all the blues. It's really forgiving with the colors you want to choose. For mine, I'm just going for a nice simple lime to light blue little gradient. And as you can see, I'm kind of building up the lime, roughly like 5 or so blocks, and kind of keeping that raising as it goes along. I don't want it to be completely flat, otherwise it will look weird again. So you want to add some variation where the others colors can kind of like swoop in. And so it's basically a gradient. It doesn't have to be the coolest, like most smooth gradient. This really has like a high, like beginner to expert level. Like this is pretty simple, and I think this looks pretty good, as we'll see later. And yeah, and now you can see I'm on the dark green, kind of moving on. And it's turning out pretty well, I'd say. It does look a bit weird at the day, but I thought, why not show off what it looks like during the day at least one point, because it won't always be night in your world, especially if this is survival or whatever. So, yeah, this project is basically just glass, I will say. And now we're on to the cyan, blending that in with the green. It kind of looks jarring from down below, but I think something to remember is that this will always be a good 100 or so blocks above you. So the perspective really changes, and I'll kind of show that off later. And now I'm finally at the light blue. I'm kind of keeping that slope up that I started with the lime and ending at a kind of a flat level, just finishing off, making sure everything is kind of cleared up. Now we'll change it to night, and let's talk about light sources. If you're in survival like me, or not like me, you can light up the candles and with the similar colors, and that kind of adds a lot. But if you want to do it in creative, there's light blocks, which is what I'm using here. And if you kind of go along, there's always like some parts that look more like smooth. And then you kind of just add the light blocks to those and then around. And it really makes it stand out, makes it feel special. And so now let's kind of put this up into the sky so you can see what it would look like there. I'm adding on these kind of wisps on the end. This is kind of just a suggestion I thought of in the moment. It kind of blends it out and isn't such a hard transition. That isn't really so much of an issue, but just kind of something to think about. And here is me kind of showing off some more of the color options like I was showing earlier. I'm in the middle of doing it now, but I think reds and magentas also look fantastic as the Northern Lights. I'm sure many of you have seen pictures, and honestly, you could try even colors that you haven't even ever seen of in pictures of the Northern Lights themselves. And now that we're basically done with the Northern Lights, we can move on into another world. I just wanted to add on at the end of this that the Northern Lights you make do not have to be similar to mine at all. You can make them shorter, taller, longer. It kind of really is very like open to interpretation, and I'm sure this way I'm doing it is probably not even the most pretty or beautiful option. I'm sure if you kind of made gradients, better smoother gradients and all that, it would look so much better, and maybe add different thicknesses. It's something to keep in mind when designing your own. So now with that being said, let's move back into that world I was earlier and start decorating and designing it to make the Northern Lights pop even more. Okay, here we are back in that world. My first step was kind of replacing the ice around the edges to be packed and blue ice, as it gave it a little bit of a thicker, heavier look, something that would often be happening in real life with the edges of the ice being a little bit more thicker and lasting a bit longer than the further you go in, especially in a lake, which I'm kind of trying to imitate here. And then the next step was replacing all the visible grass blocks with full snow blocks. The dirt of the grass blocks is really jarring, I think, in the snowy plains, as you can see further out in the distance, and I kind of like the clean white look more than the alternating between the brown and white, brown and white. And then so at this point, it was all pretty white, and I wanted to think, oh, I needed a contrast. So I added these darker boulders around and kind of replaced the regular dirt blocks with the gray wool, smooth basalt, cyan terracotta gradient, as I think that really works well to contrast all the whites and blues of the rest of the terrain. So I was a bit lazy with it and kind of didn't do it in that many places. Like I should be doing it wherever there was a bunch of dirt that was visible for my area. It kind of depends up to you how much you want to do. And this isn't even really that necessary. Sometimes it's like me over putting details in, but for you, it might not even be needed. As you can see here, I just kind of added it in the spots that'd be visible from the perspective I chose. And that was basically all I did. I was a bit lazy with it, like I said. And now we're moving on to the most important part that isn't the Northern Lights themselves, and that is a house, a nice log cabin. As you can see, it has a very nice cobblestone base, the deep slate chimney, which I kind of immediately wanted, and then I wanted to go for a stacked log cabin kind of feel. I used the stairs in between to kind of get that effect going, and use the shelves where needed to add a bit more depth to the build. That was definitely needed. I definitely later on added some texturing to the chimney and then added a nice ledge to the top. I also really wanted to add that it's important to add a glowing effect behind your windows. I did not do an interior for this house, so I added shroom lights behind the glass that really adds such a cool effect when it's nighttime, and you'll see that later, and it really adds like the effect of someone living in the middle of this like perfect pristine natural beauty. I added snow on the roof and like one of the railings later on. I really didn't want this to feel like it was just a house plopped in the middle of a snow, and I really wanted to make it feel like this has been sitting here for a bit and it's a part of the terrain. So I kind of built up the snow layers around it and on the roof to really give it that effect of, yes, this has been sitting here for a bit and it's kind of built into the terrain itself. And now moving on into that, I wanted to build some custom trees to kind of add, and then we can paste those and the Northern Lights in. Okay, here are the tree designs I wanted to use. I'll be transparent and say these are not mine and that they're one of my closest friends Jeremy's trees. I didn't really want to speak for him too much on the design. Maybe he'll leave a comment with some tips if he wants to, but I'll kind of give you a couple seconds to look at what he does with the trees. He really has a special talent when it comes to these coniferous trees, hence why I'm using his and not mine. All I kind of really did, as you'll see, changing it up the leaves and adding snow onto them where snow would fall. I wanted to think snow doesn't fall directly down always in real life. Sometimes it's blizzards, so it comes at a side, so you might want to go a little bit under the leaves, but kind of keep that snow on the outskirts and kind of make it thin inward. And that's kind of something to think about. I also used the pale oak leaves to kind of give it a more snowy look. This is something I've kind of done in the past a little bit, but not full pale oak. I like to do a little bit of gradients when it comes to leaves, so this is something I never really do, is just one flat leaf. And during the day, it definitely can be a bit weird. I think adding the snow onto the leaves itself can really add a lot, more so than if it was just the leaves by themselves. And you'll see when I'm kind of pasting these into the terrain I have set up later that it really is something special. So that's kind of all that I wanted to say. So now let's move on to the pasting of the trees and the Northern Lights into the terrain I prepared earlier. Okay, and we're on to the final step. And it is just pasting in the tree designs I had pre-prepared as well as the Northern Lights. I kind of have everything set to night and the perspective that I wanted to have in mind when building this to begin with. As you can see, you can really not see much of the grass I was talking about earlier. And I think it's really important when at least planning your northern lights to pick one focal point. Maybe an area you'd be walking up to your base most often, because the northern lights will look good from a lot of perspectives. I find it's really important to have one where it's like perfect, like you planned it out so much. Maybe that's taking a screenshot in your world and just quickly drawing the lines in like the basic editing software you have on your computer, and that can really add a lot. Maybe you have Lightmatica or any mod similar where you can kind of move them around and kind of position them where you want, take a step back, look at them, which is what I was doing a lot from this perspective with the trees as well as the northern lights. And I think this is pretty much everything, and let's move on to the final look around, and so you can really see how this looks from multiple perspectives and everything like that. Okay, there we have it. The northern lights have been built, the trees have been made, and the terrain has been added along with a little house. And it really adds so much. This is really just such a special vibe, and I really am so happy that I finally get to share it with you guys. How to do a little simple terrain like this. Yes, the Northern Lights, it's a lot of glass. I won't even sugarcoat that. It is quite a bit. But I think for like a fun little project to do, I think it's definitely something I recommend. And I know shaders add the Northern Lights themselves without much work needed on your end, but I think something about doing it yourself and maybe even customizing the colors, like I might have showed off earlier, reds and greens and so many other colors like pinks. Basically every glass color in Minecraft can work in the Northern Lights, so that itself is something super cool. And yeah, I guess that's kind of everything I kind of would have talked through. Except I want to show one last thing, and that is how these look during the day. It's what you probably wonder. And it's not as good, I'll admit. But I think it's not bad. It kind of gives like fantasy, or it's just like Northern Lights during the day. I don't know, it's hard to explain. It definitely comes alive at night, the base, but I still think I would recommend, like, this isn't bad. Maybe the glass looks a little bit more wonky during the day, and like that's maybe why you don't want to add the wisps at the end, because those can look a lot bad, way worse during the day. But otherwise, I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. And I'm sorry if you wanted a full like tutorial with block for block. I thought this kind of scope of build would be more like, hey, here's how I went about this, and maybe you could try it out too. I think that way you'll even end up learning more if you do end up taking on any of these in your own worlds. And yeah, hopefully get better at building, because that's the end goal, I guess. But I think that's just about everything in this episode. If you enjoyed this was a bit of a new thing for me to do, please subscribe and hit with a like, as it really lets me know that you are enjoying my content. But otherwise, have a very good rest of your day, and goodbye!